Hello and welcome. This is Maya Andreasen. We're going to go over the basics of laying out the UVs for a simple house. So we are working in Maya 2018, and we're going to be working in the UV toolkit. You can get access to the UV toolkit and the UV editor if you go to Workspace, and I selected the drop-down UV editing here. And as you can see, I have my UV toolkit. And I can see my UVs here, which are kind of a mess, and we see my house. So how do I know that my UVs are a mess? Well, it comes with time and expertise. But first off, I can see that there's this very sharp white line or white lines that are on my model, and that indicates where my UVs are separated. So each white line that you see means that my UV is separate from another UV, so that face is not attached to another UV. So there's a lot of detached faces up here. There's a big, huge seam in the middle. When we look at UVs, we really want to be thinking about how do we want our textures to fit together. And remember, we're taking a 3D object and we're basically flattening it out to a 2D space. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to actually see what they look like on my object. So over here in the UV editor, there's this little icon that looks like a checkerboard icon. And when you click it, it's going to turn on and it's going to show my UVs. So, well, it's going to show how my UVs are laid out on my object. And as you can see, things are looking really weird on the roof, which means there's overlap. This kind of weird display means that there's overlapping with my UVs. And indeed, if I right mouse press and go to UVs and double click, and you can see it's also selected over here in my UV toolkit, I can hit W and I can move my UVs over. Oh, look, it's this side. And suddenly when I move them over, you can see there's no more overlap, at least right here. The other thing I had clicked was the dimmer. So this right here dims my UVs so that I can really, or dims the image so I can really see what's kind of going on. I'm going to take this further so I can see things a little bit better by going right here. So this right here is shading UVs. So this indicates the direction that your UVs are in, whether horizontally or vertically, and whether they will line up and sew together well. And we can see everything is all different directions. What we'd really like to see is basically what we're kind of seeing right here is a bunch of nice squares. And we're only really seeing them in the window here. We want nice squares throughout the entire object. All right, so how do we do that? Well, there's several different ways to do that. Because this is a boxy model, we're going to primarily be using planar mapping today. Now, planar mapping can be found under which section? Sorry, guys. I usually go up here to UV and I go to planar. But you can also find it in the UV toolkit as well. And you can find it under create. So you can go to create planar and you can create planar UVs. The only issue is that you're not telling the computer directionally where you would like it to project. So when you're creating planar UVs, you're basically creating a plane that's going to project in the direction that you're asking it to. And so if you're asking it to project in the Y, it's going to make a projection that is pointing down or pointing up. If you ask it to project in the X, it's going to project in the X axis. And obviously, if you ask it to project in the Z, it'll be projecting forward or backwards in the Z. So the first thing that we're going to start with, let's start with our roof. So I'm thinking about what I want the roof to look like, what I want it to be. I am going to press tab so that I can easily select roof items. And in this case, I'm just going to select this side of the roof. So I'm just selecting this side of the roof. You can always hit 4 if you'd like to make sure you did not do this, which is accidentally select other faces that we don't actually want. Here's another face, very odd that got chosen, but it did. So we're just going to try and go in there and deselect it. So that is deselected. Let's take a look what this looks like. Let's go back to 5. Okay, so we also have things here. So oftentimes I'll go to 4 just to see, what I really have selected, because I don't want weird random UVs selected. So we're going to project this in the Y. So we're going to go to planar options box. And we already have this at the Y. Let's reset settings. So we want to project from the Y because this is pointing down. Now we could also project from the X as well. Any way you look at it, we are going to have to rotate our selection, and we'll go into that. So we're going to do Y-axis, and I'm going to check on keep image width height ratio, and I'm going to project. And when we project, we get something that looks like this. Okay. Now this is pretty cool because we can make our projection bigger or smaller by grabbing one of these cubes. We can stretch it if we want to. You can hit Z to undo. There's also a little T square here. It's a little red T. And what that allows is it allows us to actually rotate or scale our UVs when we're in UV editing mode or planar mode. So I'm actually just rotating my UVs right now. And we can go to the front view to really see this. And I'm going to make it so that it's rotated to the angle of the roof. Go back to perspective view. And as you can see here, we've got all these nice, wonderful cubes. That's what we want. I'm going to open up my channel box here. So I had it minimized. The other way that you can affect the projection width and height is here in your channels. So as long as you're in UV editing mode, like cylindrical, planar, or spherical, you can go and manipulate the projection when you're in that mode, as you can see. So I can change the projection center, X, Y, and Z axis, the image center, the rotation. As you can see, I have manipulated it. The larger the projection width and height, the smaller the actual UV shell is in our UV editors. Right now it's at 11, so if I were to increase it to say 20, as we can see, it's gotten smaller. And we could do that for everything that is our roof. So that's what I'm going to do. So this first video, what we're going to do is we're just going to lay out our roof. And the next video will probably tackle the walls. All right, so we've tackled the top of the roof. Okay. If you're not sure, you can always hit 4, right, to double check and see what you've selected. And this looks pretty good. Okay. Now, if you want, while we're here, we can also tackle this inner portion here. In fact, I'm going to do that. And I think I'm also going to tackle the floor of the house. Now, these things don't have to all be sewn together, but they are all going to be, we're going to project through the Y-axis. So every single one of them, we're going to project through the Y-axis. So it's pretty easy to just get some of those things done now. Okay. I'm not going to do it for everything, but I did it for a couple things. This looks good. So we are going to go to UV, planar, Y, project, restore my channel box, and we're going to make the projection width and height 20 by 20. So now everything here is 20 by 20, which is great. Okay, so now that I've done that, let's take a look at these areas. So this right here, I know is the floor. Okay, I'm actually going to put it over to the side now. Now, when we export our UVs, we want it in the 1-to-1-to-1 space. But while we're working on the UVs, we can stretch out a little bit, get a little bit more space. And if I take a look at this right here, this is my central portion of my house. Okay, probably belongs over here, but we'll see. All right, so let's get to this area of the roof here. So I'm gonna press tab. Now you'll notice, I want you guys to take a look at this part of the roof and see how different it looks from this side. This side is all nice squares. This side is all stretched. It looks like a zebra print, right? It just looks like a bunch of lines, maybe some cool wallpaper, I don't know. So this might look like it's right if you're a novice, but in actuality, this is not how it should look. It should look something like this. It's okay if the squares are bigger. It's okay if the squares are smaller. But what's not okay is for the squares to be stretched. So we are going to go back to our UV planar mapping, and this time we're actually going to do it in the x-axis, because you can do this in the x-axis, and we're going to project. Okay, so when I do this in the x-axis, you'll notice that it's actually on its side. Actually, let me redo this really fast, because I feel like something was not checked. Well, it looks like it was. Okay. So now I need to find, in order for this to be correct, I need to find this little T-square, and there it is, so that I can rotate. And I'm going to go to my front view, and I'm just going to rotate this until the z-axis is flush with the angle of the roof. I'm then going to go to my channels, and I'm going to make my projection height 20 by 20. And there we go. If we take a look at this, let's go back into perspective. We can see we've got some nice squares here going on. All right, so we are going to actually sew the roof together. So right now, this roof is 3 different pieces. They're not together. But I know that when I apply texture, I want this roof to be one texture. It's going to be a different texture from the trim. It's going to be a different texture from the siding, which is the walls, or the stone. Your house may be made of stone, or it could be made of brick. It's up to you to decide. But I know the roof itself will be a different material. It's going to be made of a different material than the walls, and a different material from the trim. And so I want it to be all one object. All right, so what do we do to create it all one object? Well, first things first, let's move this over here. I need to make it so that this part of the roof can be sewn together with this part. But I already know there's some issues. One, it's red. So that means I need to do some flipping. So in order to do that, let's go to the transform section and scroll down to flip. So if I flip this in the U, it's suddenly blue. So it's in the same direction as the rest of the roof. I can also rotate things at increments. Now, right now, this is at 90 degrees. If I wanted to, I could change it to 45 or 15. So if I rotate it like that, rotates at 90 degrees. And so now it looks like, it appears as if it's in the proper direction as the rest of the roof. And that it will actually be sewable. So let's turn off our texture preview. We're going to go up to edge mode. So if I go here, oh, look at that. If you select an edge on any of your UVs, it's going to select the corresponding edge of other UVs in your scene. And this is what allows us to sew UVs together. So I have selected my edges, and I'm going to scroll down until I get to, let's put that up, to cut and sew. And so if you twirl down cut and sew, you'll see a stitch together option. And if I click it, it will not only stitch together my UVs, but it will also move them at the same time. If I don't do that, if I just did the sew option, this is what would happen. So if I did sew, it would actually stretch my UVs. And if I previewed them, they would look horrible. It would like basically undo all that work. And there's where that stretches, and we don't want that. So we're going to undo that. And instead, we're going to stitch it together. So now if we turn this back on, we can see that everything is stitched together seamlessly and there's no stretching. So we didn't undo all the work that we initially did. And I can move this back over here. Now, we want to save it. We want to save often. So I'm going to do File, Save Scene As. And we're going to save this now as demo version 2. All right, so we now have our roof, okay? So the next thing, and we actually have our floor. I'm actually gonna select the floor and I'm going to flip it so it is kind of in the same direction as the roof. Okay. And when we come back in our next video, we are going to lay out the UVs for the next material that we want to be sewn together. And that's going to be all of our walls. So we want all of our walls to be sewn together. Okay, so we're going to have to lay those out individually. All right, till video 2.